So before 300, before The Dark Knight Returns, before Sin City, and before Ronin, we had Daredevil, The Man Without Fear, issue number 168. This book has a publication date of January 1981, written and drawn by Frank Miller, inker and embellisher Klaus Janson, colorist Dr. Martin, and Jim Shooter was the editor-in-chief, which we'll see a little bit of that in the later issue. First appearance of Elektra, also a little bit of an origin story of Matt and Elektra's relationship. We're going to see it all inside of this book right here. So excited to get inside of it. So let's do that. First off, my original copy here has been through some kind of a house fire. This was actually brought into the shop, very badly damaged, but it's in the It's Mine condition. You can actually see the burn down here all the way across the bottom. It's going to be a theme throughout it. I'm going to get over it. We're all going to get over it. Let's get into this magnificent book right here. First off, the cover right off the bat, very Frank Miller-esque. We have a little bit of a artistic foreshadowing, almost in a way, for The Dark Knight Returns, even with this big gigantic lightning bolt, some characters jumping through it. We have that mostly black silhouette that we're going to see later in Sin City. We have just an amazing, dynamic, kinetic cover, and I'm absolutely loving it. Let's get into the interior pages right here. So right off the bat, Frank Miller is wasting no time giving you this dreary scene right here over in Hell's Kitchen. Very dark, very moody, excellent lighting with these lampposts, things like that, telling everybody about, you know, how dark and cold and brooding. And it's almost like a Rorschach's journal kind of a moment in this very opening scene right here. But Daredevil's actually staking out a couple of guys that are undercover right now. They have some information about a man that's wanted, and he is attacking them right here in this scene in a very dramatic way with his little baton right here, getting the jump on these guys that are kind of posing as people living on the street, blind people, things like that. And so he wastes no time getting their attention and basically roundhouse kicking this dog that they send to attack him as well. Like, oh crap, Daredevil's here. Let's sick the dog on him. But Daredevil roundhouse kicks that pup and goes right in for the leg sweep and the back elbow move right here, hitting him so hard that he lets go of his cane. And then he begins his interrogation of this guy right here. Again, just trying to get information about a wanted man, some guy that framed somebody else for murder. And so Daredevil's in the scene right here, trying to get some more information about where this guy might be hiding. Of course, this bad guy's partner ends up having this makeshift bomb, like this nitroglycerin bomb that he uses to get Daredevil away from his friend, which causes a gigantic explosion, some disorientation for everybody as he makes a break towards the alley, ends up crashing through this wooden fence right here, which I think is a pretty cool little snippet of time right here. I love the vertical panels, something we're going to see a lot of from Frank Miller in later issues, later series, but making good use of this, stepwise fashion right here of storytelling. Again, falling through, and we get this cool page turn moment right here where he's like, oh no, and you just know that Daredevil is going to be on the other side. But it's not exactly what you would expect, because Daredevil actually took that blast fairly hard. He's relatively injured inside of here, basically in some kind of a defensive position, almost holding his arm like something happened over here, which gives our thug here a little bit of false hope about how he can take advantage of a injured Daredevil. All the while, actually, Elektra's up here on this guy wire up above the whole scene. Daredevil doesn't exactly notice her because he's relatively injured, and now he's facing off against this guy about to draw on him. And so Elektra is actually introduced, watching what's going on, and she recognizes Daredevil. Daredevil, what is he doing here? He could ruin everything. I can't let that happen. And she actually jumps into the scene as well, knocking out Daredevil with one of her sais, the back end of her sais, giving him a little roundhouse kick and capturing the thug right here, who she is actually out for as well because of some murder that took place over in Europe. She was actually sent here to take care of the same guy that Daredevil was looking for, but she's kind of a bounty hunter for hire. She's actually like an assassin in this time in her life. And when she actually confronts the thug and knocks Daredevil out, she speaks, and Daredevil recognizes her as well as Elektra right before he passes out. So it's a very interesting opening right here, because we have Daredevil and Elektra both going for the same guy. They both recognize each other. And then we have this blackout moment for Daredevil, which is where we get into the origin story of these two. And it has to do with Foggy Nelson as well. Back in the day, before Daredevil, there was a 19-year-old boy who has not yet found the purpose for his strange powers, Matt Murdock, freshman studying pre-law at Columbia University, and it shows him and Foggy maybe, going out, getting their books, things like that. And Foggy actually trips, being very clumsy, going up these stairs, throwing his books around. And this is where we actually meet Elektra for the first time. This is kind of before she becomes Elektra herself, but she's very well trained from her family. So there's some things we're going to see in the later issue that showcases some of her powers at this point. Not only her powers, but Matt Murdock's powers as well. And we get a little explanation about that because, this is a Jim Shooter era. And so we're going to get a little bit of an origin story recap as well as we go. Elektra's actually surrounded by some of her family's bodyguards, very wealthy family. Her father doesn't want anything to happen to her while she's over abroad. And so we have to figure out some clever ways to separate her from the bodyguards. One of the friends from Matt Murdock actually throws a paper airplane, getting the attention of this brute over here. So Matt can, get the flowers out and start putting on the charm for Elektra down here. She's very charmed. She's nice to Matt. She kind of says, I haven't had any friends since I've been over here, but you're a blind man. I don't exactly know how it's going to work. I don't know what's going on. And so he takes it relatively hard, but this is where he actually shows her some of his abilities. Yeah, I might be blind, but I'm very well capable of doing some other stuff. Then, of course, we get our little origin story right here because every comic might be someone's first comic, so we need a little bit of an origin story. A radioactive canister fell from a truck and struck me in my eyes, blinding me, and she goes on about how horrible it can be. But he has other heightened senses, and he's been training, things like that. He just hasn't really become Daredevil necessarily at this point. And so she's actually quite impressed about this, saying that she actually will go on a date with him. And so he ends up winning her over with his abilities for sure. And that will about cover it for our introduction, how they actually met. And the next page will go over how the relationship matures from there. Basically, they're practically inseparable for the next year, continuing to date. It says here for a year, they were euphoric. So I guess we can all know what that means right here. Basically spending a lot of time with each other, if you get my drift. But we're going to cut back to Foggy and Matt. It says then they're actually approaching the administration building. Looks like Foggy is going to apply for some kind of fraternity, and he's got his weird headgear on, things like that. Like, why wouldn't you want to join this fraternity? And as they approach the administration building, they notice a commotion going on. There's a lot of people gathered up at the administration building, and they learn through people that are already in the scene that there's a hostage situation right now, and Elektra is part of that, and so is her father. And there's actually a lot of different, thugs up here holding people hostage, threatening to kill some people. And this is where Matt actually dresses up and starts jumping onto the building, trying to find access in there, assessing the situation very carefully, he says. Like, he needs to figure out how many people are in there. How is he going to get to them? How is he going to save the day without causing any fatalities? Something like that. And he overhears them saying, we should just kill the girl, because that would tell them that we really mean business, and we're saying we're going to kill some people, so we just need to go ahead and do it just to show him how serious we are. So when Matt hears that, he gets ultra desperate, trying to find different ways into the building. When he gets into the building, he notices there's initially two guys over here, which he takes them up pretty silently, but he doesn't anticipate the next guy kind of coming up the walkway right here. He tries to take him out, but he actually pulls the trigger and fires a round into the floor, alerting everybody else. And so he has to think very quickly as they rush the door and start threatening the lives of the hostages inside. Now, there's a part in here, very well choreographed fight and battles and everything, and very interesting paneling. It makes you jump from spot to spot. So he's kind of in control of how fast you're reading and how fast you're intaking this story right here. And I do like that a lot. And there's a moment in here where he says, "Hit him low, Olive Oil," talking to Elektra as in, hey, I'm going to take care of this one guy, but I need her to step up at the exact same moment, using her skills to take out the other thug so he doesn't cause any damage or anything like that. So we're going to remember this line right here because it's become very, very relevant towards the end of this issue. Unfortunately, this is a moment where Matt Murdock, ricocheting his walking stick, hitting this thug in the head, who actually falls backwards through the window and presumably to his death. And there's also a moment immediately following that where Elektra's dad actually thinks that the coast is clear and stands up in front of this window right here, a window that's being highly monitored by the police and sharpshooters, who were given the word that if they have a clear shot of the people, he would take it, but they mistakenly identify one of the hostage takers with one of the hostages himself, and he actually takes 3 rounds to the back and he collapses and dies in this panel. So, of course, Matt was over here trying to save the day, thought he accomplished it. He ends up killing a guy in this scene right here, presumably, and because of that chain of events right here, her dad stands up and actually gets murdered by the police on accident at the same time. So what a tragic first kind of outing for Daredevil in front of this girl that he's assumingly falling in love with at this moment. And she's actually screaming, let me go, Papa, Papa. And he's saying how sorry he is in this scene. And we get this infinite close-up right here where it's a far away scene. We get her face and we zoom in right on the eye. So extremely dramatic, and it's supposed to, carry a lot of emotional weight, as it obviously does. Then we get like this 14 panels right here, all vertical in nature. And again, it's kind of meant for your eye to jump from one to the other to see this not only passage of time, but change in emotion, which I think is handled really well. Elektra doesn't cry in the situation right here, but she understands that, hey, the system, the society, the justice system, everything around here, and the cops and everything is just so messed up. I can't live in this environment anymore, and I can't be with you because you're going down this path, and I just can't follow you, with pre-law and everything like that. She just doesn't trust him or the system, and so she actually says her goodbyes right here, and this is the last time that Daredevil saw Elektra after a year of basically and being in love with her and dating and everything. We have this tragic event, and she ends up leaving shortly after. And this is kind of the brilliance of the storytelling, because we opened up with Daredevil in the present day taking on this thug who he just needed to get information from. Then Elektra comes in and actually incapacitates Daredevil, knocks him unconscious. We almost have this dream state, which was what this last few pages were. And then we pick right back up with Daredevil in the gutter, in the rain, regaining consciousness from being knocked out, from the explosion and from Elektra and everything like that, hitting him with the sigh. And he actually kind of picks up the conversation, please don't go, with a couple coughs over here. And he's like, wow, I haven't smelled her in a very long time. I haven't thought about her. She must have gone away and honed her skills and has become this insanely talented assassin during this time, and I have to find her. I have to see what else is going on, and I have to bring her to justice, because Matt's in this frame of mind lately as Daredevil to be this like do-gooder in a way, and he sees her as an assassin. He doesn't exactly know what she's up to at the moment, but he knows that he needs to find her and he needs to bring her to justice. And again, this paneling right here is very reminiscent of this one for me, because if we open up with this close-up shot of him regaining consciousness, which seems appropriate, and as we back out just to kind of see where he is, and he's having these revelations as he goes in, so we zoom in, and then we zoom back out, and then we zoom right back in when he has his next goal in a way, just to add that dramatic effect on there. So very cool storytelling in those panels as well. And again, very Dark Knight-esque right here. We have this city landscape, all the classic feathering and black and white that we're used to with Frank Miller at this point. Again, some very dramatic angles and lighting and whatnot, some character design. We actually get to meet the man, Mr. Slaughter, who's actually hiding the person that Elektra and Daredevil were trying to get more information on, who goes by Mr. Wallingquest, and he's this man right here sitting down drinking at the moment. And so Mr. Slaughter actually gets a call from one of the thugs that he had over in New York, and this is one of the thugs that Elektra had detained at the moment, and he's making a call right now to basically say, oh, nope, everything's according to plan. We're going to have the boat ready. We're going to have the plane ready to take Wallingquest out of here. We're going to get into safety. Don't worry about it. But he actually slips a little bit of a secret code in the message that Mr. Slaughter intercepts over here, basically telling him that, oh no, he's been captured by this bounty hunter that we know that exists out in that area, and that he's been compromised, but we're going to be ready for the bounty hunter. So everything is okay, and we're going to go forward. And he tells basically one of his henchmen, hey, I'm out of cigars right now. I need you to go outside and get me some more cigars, which he doesn't take that very kindly. He's basically out here saying how much he's been mistreated. He's got 4 hits on his belt right now. He doesn't need to go out and answer phone calls and get cigars and things like that. He's feel like he's being mistreated. Luckily for Daredevil, he's kind of staking out the joint, recognizes this guy, recognizes the smell of the cigars that this guy wants to get, knows exactly where that cart is that sells them, and he's just kind of waiting for one of his goons to go out to go fetch him some more cigars so he can nap him up and take him in for some questioning. And I just love that scene right there where he's just kind of waiting for him, and then he just grabs him and takes him up. There's some cool artwork in here. If you notice, like these bricks and this perspective right here and these grates, this is a lot of stuff you're going to see in Sin City later. And it's really interesting that he would take time just to kind of develop this world. Like, you didn't need to have a grate right here. You could have done something a lot easier than these bricks and this perspective. And you didn't need a fire extinguisher, or a fire hydrant rather, over here as well with chains and all sorts of stuff. You could have chose a very more simplified angle to pick, but like it's almost like a rat looking up angle, and it was a very interesting choice. And I'm just glad that he does those kinds of things just to make it more interesting and not so, you know, basic and things like that. And those are the things that I love Frank Miller for. He just takes his time and just does things that he doesn't need to do, but it really adds to the experience of the comic. Of course, we get our classic interrogation scene right here where our hero is holding the gang member over the edge of a building saying, you know, give me what I want to know or I'm going to throw you off the building. And of course, this is a very, you know, this is a line we've seen before. Like, you got to rap. Everybody knows you ain't killing nobody. And of course you drop them and then you save them again, right? Just to kind of get the blood pumping a little bit, get that anxiety up. And I think it's pretty cool. I don't know how they're able to do these kinds of things, but it's a very cool, dramatic thing. Again, it's a vertical fall. So why not have gigantic vertical panels over here? Again, lighting's a really big thing inside of Frank Miller books. So we're going to showcase that over here. And of course, it just takes one fall for this weasel to start cracking. Of course, now we have our evacuation scene over here. This is, again, the scene where the thug that was captured by Elektra gave the code word over to his boss to let him know that he's been compromised. And so they are more than ready for Elektra's presence to be known on this dock. And again, we're going to pause over here and see some more kind of foreshadowing about Frank Miller's artistic style and some of the choices that he makes up here. A lot of this kind of stuff we're going to see back in Ronin when he starts writing that. So pretty cool stuff. Again, this black and white kind of motif here. It's just something we're going to see develop over time, which is a cool thing to note. Again, the gangsters all know that she's going to be here. They don't exactly know who she is or what she's capable of, but all they know is that our thug was brought over by this assassin and they're going to go take her on. Now she's like, it looks like she's in some kind of a trench coat in this scene right here. And then she's in full-fledged assassin gear, the kind of gear that we recognize Elektra to be in at most of the time, but she makes quick work of all these thugs, even like mid-sentence over here, just taking them on very, very easily. There's some interesting things going on in this panel down here. There's some arms in some weird places, things like that. Like you see Elektra's elbow hitting this guy in the face, and you see her holding her like the pointing end of the sai wrapping around this guy's wrist to detain her a little bit. And then you see this guy's arm. He must be like lunging forward, trying to wrap it around her in a way, like a garrote wire or something like that. But she kind of uses that close quarters to her advantage, incapacitating the arm here, punching him right in the nose, kicking this dude in the face. Very, very talented, does not shy away from a fight and does not mind getting up close and personal. Again, even up here, then spinning around and kicking this dude in the face. Not exactly sure what that is right there, if that's supposed to be her foot, because it doesn't look like her foot. There's no like red tape or boot. So I'm not exactly sure. Both of his arms are right there. And she's got an elbow over here and another one holding the sai in the back. So I'm not exactly sure what that is right there. So I think that's interesting when you see those kinds of things. But again, really cool kung fu poses. You know, it's well choreographed and things like that. Good form and everything, right? She definitely knows what she's doing. And she's barely breaking a sweat. She's over here basically giving this guy a smirk as she punches this guy with the blunt end of her object. And is she done? No, man. She's surrounded by people with guns and she's yelling basically, who's next? So extremely confident, even in a situation where it's like, listen, you're outnumbered, you're outgunned, you need to just give it up. So I think it really goes to show you how well equipped she is for things like this. So we get in a little thing right here where basically the villain, again, recognizes talent. He's saying basically, hey, knock this off. Why don't you join us? We can make good use of you. And when she declines, he's like, you know what? Fine. We're going to go back to the old ways. Guys, take care of her, find something heavy, tie it around her, throw it off the dock like we used to do back in the day. And as he's saying that, there's actually some guy sitting in the corner that hits her with a tranquilizer dart, basically knocking her up. And as she's getting tied up, guess who comes to the rescue? None other than Daredevil himself, hijacking the plane that was used to extract the guy to begin with. And he uses that as basically a distraction device to crash it into the dock, him leaping out of the pilot seat at the last moment, presumably, and over here taking care of the rest of the goons. What I like about this one too is he's telling Slaughter not to go wandering off. He'll be right there with him. And he's like, screw this, I'm out of here. And you can see the dude walking away slowly with his little cane right here. But is he walking over to try to escape, or does he have something else going on? Matt realizes, oh no, don't move, Daredevil. Stay precisely where you are. And again, another page flip, a dramatic shot right here. We have Elektra at gunpoint. She's bound up. She's tranquilized. She can't do anything right now. And basically, he's saying, you know what? There's really nothing I could do in this situation. He's a little bit too far away for me to attack him before he can pull the trigger. I'll be too late to save her. So I need to do what he wants me to do and start walking away. But At some point, he's going to turn that gun on me, and that's going to be my moment to attack. All I have to do is use my keen senses, listen for that heartbeat, listen for that trigger pull, something like that, and I can make my move. Very, very gutsy plan. Again, in this vertical paneling, just adding that suspense, that like anxiety almost. When I was reading this, there's a nice big panel, and then I'm like compressed in these little fractions of a second across here, which makes it feel really tight and unnerving, which I think just brings such dramatic effect to the book itself. And then as he's pointing that gun at Daredevil, about to pull that trigger, he realizes, oh, she's regaining consciousness. I can get her to help me take care of the situation. And he throws that baton and he says, hit him low, olive oil. The same line that we used back right before her father died during that rescue mission with the hostages. And to a great effect, he actually ricochets that baton off, 1, 2, and hitting our bad guy right in the back of the head as she kicks him low, firing the pistol into the air, knocking him out. And that's when Elektra is saved and she recognizes, Matt, is that you? Again, from the phrase that he used a moment ago to sync up their attacks. They have this embracing moment here, and he has to walk away. Closing with echoing beneath the West Side Highway, approaching police sirens wail. A distant foghorn gives out a great long moan, and for the first time, Elektra cries. Again, a reference to her father's funeral, how she didn't cry for that. She was more filled with anger and vengeance at that moment. She didn't cry in that scene, but the reunion between her and Matt after all this time, they both went through so much, they both grown, they both been through a lot of tragedy since then, and now they embraced once more, and she's kind of crashing down exactly the way that Matt did when he realized it was Elektra to begin with. So such a cool book right here. I love reading some of these notes over here too about the readers of the previous issues and how they see Daredevil, they see Matt Murdock, they see like his personality. Some like the direction that his personality is going into, and some people don't like that. They like that they're superheroes in a certain way. And so some of that's outlined in here, and I thought that was an interesting read. Again, you can see, I think these almost look like fingerprints or water damage, but you can see how chewed up this book is. But I'm glad it was saved from whatever happened back when this book was in its previous owner's hands. So let's go over the key elements in this book again. First appearance of Elektra with the origin story. Certainly delivered on that. It had plenty of scenes in here where she was battling and even saving Matt Murdock in the opening scenes right here. I like the storytelling as well that they did where Matt Murdock loses consciousness and he's actually dreaming or remembering his origin story and how he got to know Elektra and just the mystery of her leaving, things like that. And then the tragedy with the father was actually quite hard on all of them because she ended up leaving at the end of it. And then he went down this road of, I got to bring justice to everybody kinds of things. And so I thought it was a really great book. It had a lot of action inside of it. It was a clever way of introducing her, bringing her origin story in, making it impactful. Like you can see the impact they both had on each other. And then that time spent apart really made things more difficult once they realized who the other one was in these different situations. So I thought it was a pretty good key comic right there. Let me know what you guys thought. Did you read this as it was coming out? Have you collected the Frank Miller runs? What do you think about this story overall? I'll probably end up doing her death as well. That seems like a pretty big landmark issue that I certainly want to cover. But let me know down below what you thought of Daredevil Man Without Fear, issue number 168, first appearance of Elektra. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. And while you're down there, like, subscribe, share, hit that bell notification to be alerted of future videos. Thanks, guys. See you in the comments.